Something is shifting. What we were told was permanent is being questioned in real time. This is not simply chaos, it's an inflection point, or perhaps more precisely, a rupture. A rupture not chosen, but triggered. The point, however, is not the trigger. The point is our response. A moment when the future can bend toward what we choose to rethink and rebuild. But we cannot reimagine society without first reimagining ourselves. Remember this. Every system reflects the beliefs of the society that created it. Welcome to Inflection Point Podcast, where Reimagine We begins with Reimagine Me. Hello to our audience and welcome to the newest episode of Inflection Point Podcast. We are a space for reflective conversations and personal empowerment and community engagement and cooperation. So in our reflective conversations, we think together in real time. We explore meaning, experience, and ideas with curiosity without attempts to persuade or to perform. So we keep it real on this show. Here we don't just talk about the world. We examine the ways that we are being formed by what's happening around us and how together we can reimagine it all. So I am your host, Anita Russell, and this is Reimagine We. And here's a quick hello from our co-host, Mavis. I keep saying Mavis. I won't Mavis, obviously. A quick hello from our co-host, Gail Hunter.
Hi, I'm Gail Hunter, and welcome to this evening's show. But before we jump into the discussion, I'd like to give a quick shout out for Women's History Month. I honor Francia Marquez. She's a Colombian environmental activist and lawyer and political leader. She became the first Afro-Colombian woman elected vice president of Colombia in 2022. Her story is pretty amazing. At 13, she became an activist when a dam threatened to swallow their entire community. And she later went to school to work in the mines. And then she was a single mother at 16. She worked as a housekeeper and she worked in the mines. And she went back to school, got a law degree, and then returned home to fight, which she did. She organized 80 women for a long 350-mile march. And they were fighting to get the gold miners to stop destroying their land and water. And she won. So congratulations to her.
Excellent.
And all of us, yes.
Yeah, excellent, Gail. Thank you so much for that powerful Women's History Month moment. So let's just kind of get started on today's topic. We have a very special guest with us today. His name is William Miles, and he is the William Miles. I'm sorry. Yes, yeah. I'm so sorry. Author of Imagine, Toward a Brotherhood of Man. And so the title of this particular episode in this conversation is Who Shapes the Moral Climate of Society? And this is a conversation with William Miles, and we're going to jump right into, first I'm going to start off with his bio, just to give a little background on who he is, and then we'll just get started in the conversation. So William Miles is a graduate of William Patterson University in New Jersey with a major in psychology. As a graduate, William earned a BA degree in psychology with over 20 years of deep sitting practice and having the opportunity to acquaint himself with well-known masters. He left all of that behind in order to forge his own way, abandoning the sitting groups to explore his own curiosities. And today he spends most of his time researching, writing, and taking care of his family. So William, welcome to Inflection Point Podcast. So why don't we start off with you just kind of telling your own version of who you are?
My own version of who I am. Okay, well, you summed it up pretty good. Anything to add to it? Just passionate about writing, about expressing my thoughts and my research, my findings, and sharing it with people who are curious about it and who want, to improve their lives and go deeper into what, the meaning of what they read is and what goes on behind the scenes and, stuff like that. People who are curious. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we have been focusing quite a bit on this whole thing with reimagine this whole idea of worldview formation. And so when I took a look at your book, when you reached out and I saw your book, some things just started to click for me. And one of them is around this 8-2 theory of leadership and human potential, which is what you present in your book. So, for
Yeah.
the sake of our audience, when we talk about worldview formation, we're referring to a process by which individuals or groups develop a comprehensive set of beliefs and values and assumptions that kind of shape their understanding and interpretation of the world. So, to get this conversation started, I want to start off with a quote directly from William's book. Imagine the possibility of exposing hidden forces that have manipulated civilizations, sparked genocides, and turned brother against brother. Imagine how much better your life could be if you had knowledge powerful enough to fuel culture, unite humanity, and create meaning in people's lives for generations to come. So when I think about this kind of within the context of this reimagined anthropology and just getting a different understanding of what a human being is in relation to another human being. Who is it that counts fully as human in our imagination? So the first question that I have for William is, why do you use the word imagine in your book title? And talk to us a little bit about that, how that word kind of really ties into the overall topic of your book.
All right. I use imagine basically because it's more playful. You
Mm,
tinker with the ideas, you experiment with the new ideas in the book instead of saying something like have faith, believe, trust, which is more like here's my idea and jump into it. So imagine is more like dipping your foot in the water, testing the temperature and seeing whether it agrees with you or not, without jumping in first and feeling uncomfortable with the temperature, you
Yeah,
know.
it's kind of like it's like an invitation almost, and not
Yes.
really a command. So it kind of disarms any kind of defensiveness, which is brilliant, and very necessary. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
absolutely. And
So,
I like the way
Yeah.
you talked about it kind of in this playful kind of way, because you think about children, and when children are playing, they're really using their imagination to the fullest, right? And so I agree with you that the way that word sort of what it implies kind of relates directly to some of the things that you talk about in your book. And also with this platform and the whole idea of reimagining, right? Kind of
right.
taking a look at where are we, what are some of the things that we can do differently and all of that so that we can move in a different direction. So one of the sort of monumental things in your book that you talked about is this 8-2 ratio question and
Yeah.
kind of linking that to the moral climate of society. So can you talk a little bit about that ratio? What does it mean in your writing and your thinking and how it connects to this idea of imagine?
Right. So the ratio is based on my findings of research. I've, researched for 20 plus years, religious sects from around the world, Buddhist, Taoist, Christianity, Kabbalah, everything. I've done a lot of reading and digging into the text that not many people like to read because a lot of people are more into the the books written about those texts, not the official sacred or, text kind of things. So I dug deep into those and mixed that with my meditation that I've done. Kind of, it's very insightful, and I go deeper into um, states where I can understand the books a little better. And A2 theory was what came out of different texts had different uh, aspects of the A3 ratio in them, but they weren't put together in like in a A2 theory kind of way. So I had to bring all that together and make the book. And that's how the A2 theory came. I wasn't looking for it. I kind of
Mm.
saw different things coming together, and I made the A2 theory.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, yeah.
Excellent. Excellent.
I don't want to disclose too much of it because then nobody wants to read the book.
Oh, no, 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 no. You'll spark everybody's interest and they'll want to buy the book and read the book for that more in-depth
Uh,
understanding. So, Gail,
Yeah.
you had something you wanted to comment?
Well, I mean, it's yeah, I've heard and read about the A2, and it really, I think there's probably a lot of very basic truth in it that it doesn't take very many people to change or shift a perception or belief system, and to make that either whether it's for good or bad or evil. I mean, it can be either way, but which is also can be used for very many positive things and to really shift what's been happening in this world and in our country. I think it really could be extremely effective.
Exactly, exactly. So if you consider this about the 8-to-2 ratio, 80% of humanity shares an invisible bond that transcends race, religion, and nationality, right? So this is that sort of larger affected group. And then you have that 20% that are kind of operating by a completely different set of rules. But what's interesting is sometimes that smaller group is a group that ends up dominating. So if you take a look at that, or if you look at it within the context of like dehumanization, right, where you have some people that are automatically seen as fully human, and then you have others that have to kind of negotiate their belonging. So if you think about it, William, I want to hear how you think about it in those types of scenarios when you're really looking at one group being influential and having an impact on a much larger group of people.
All right, the 20% are it's very hard to explain because they're involved in, they're born kind of like the opposite of the other 80%. The 80% is the part or the ratio aspect of humanity that God can easily, or God or it or whatever force is good and benevolent in the world, can easily reach and transform with his, love and power. And then the 20% would be the group that is very hard for him to reach because they're just born different is the best way I can explain it. Born very evil. I call them the evil tools of with successful actions. And the reason why we haven't really been able to become maybe something better as a race is because they've been so successful at not being known by the rest of the people until this book came out, and maybe possibly something different can come from it. So yeah. So that yeah.
Right. So one of the insights that I got in reading your book, because as I was reading it, I was kind of tying it over into the work that I'm doing, particularly around racism and worldview formation and all of that. So the insight that I got when you think about racism, nationalism, and tribalism and hierarchy, they are not first political issues. They are actually identity issues that are produced by worldview formation, right? So when you think about in different historical situations, to your point, there's a relatively small number of people who strongly shape the moral direction of a society, right? And that could be either for the good or it could be for the bad. So when you start looking at this sort of 80-20 thing that you're bringing out, it creates a lot of insight on a whole lot of different types of levels. So
That was my purpose.
yeah. So tell me
Yeah.
more about that.
Well, I didn't know, like I'm only the writer. I'm only the guy with some idea. And then everyone else who has their opinion or view on the idea, the book, the content in the webpage, they're gonna have their own version, their own kind of style of how they express the A2 theory because, like a lawyer, a doctor, somebody in high school, they're gonna have different versions of their A2 theory. And yeah, so that's how I see it, It's just What was the other part that you said something?
No, I was just talking about like in the work that I do, because I've done a lot of work, for example, as in the anti-racism space, and just looking at how we get divided up. And sometimes it just depends on what worldview lens are you looking through. So, for example, if you look at the sort of the economic structure in America, as an example, under the capitalistic system that we live in, we have a very small percentage of individuals that have a lot of money, right? Compared to the 80% of the rest of us, right? And so because of their influence from that capitalistic perspective, and from the fact that they have, I mean, if you listen now, I'd say like 20 years ago, people talked about being a millionaire. Now people talk about being a trillionaire. And it's like, but it's such a small group of people. But because they are in the position that they're in from that economic perspective, they have a lot of influence. Right. And that
Yeah.
influence is coming from, again, this very small group of people
Yeah.
have so much, and they're able
Well,
to
that's
impact so many different things that happen in our lives. So if you could comment on that a little bit.
yeah, the small group of people who has the influence, whether positive or negative, it's related to what I wrote about in my blog, Pareto's principle. 80% of results in either a business organization, or I, expanded it to how people experience life on the planet, So 80% of how we experience Earth or the world is due to 20% of the people in it, or the factors. So either for good or for bad. And I think throughout history it has been, because we have not known these 20%, it has been the evil tools of successful actions who have run the show. And that's why so many negative things have occurred. And, they've controlled 80% of how we experience the world. But the book, its purpose is basically to switch that or flip the script, as the video, the book trailer says, and provide people with the knowledge where the 20% might be, somebody more wiser or intelligent, or somebody who cares about the well-being of the planet more, and is able to accomplish something of that sort for the rest of us. So when the 20% switches from the evil tools of successful actions to eights that are naturally born leaders, I categorize the eights in my book. There's about 3 or 4 different kinds of eights. One I left out. I never mentioned this either in my blog or in my book, as a way to encourage people to be curious about this left out group of aids, and to find out on their own. That's where the imagine and the curiosity and the tinkering part comes up. But yeah, flipping the script and having the 20% be more of the benevolent group of people. And maybe that'll cause 80% of the way we experience life to be more I don't know, flowing, natural, decent. I mean, it still leaves 20% to be a little chaotic, but it beats being 80% being chaotic, right? I think it's an improvement. And I don't think anything before this book has been able to improve upon our situation as much as, that possibility, I think.
So Gail, look, you were shaking your head. So you had some comments?
Yeah, I mean, it's you think about the 20%, and I've always said that I believe that if every one of us would meet each other with kindness and respect, that would have an incredible effect on humanity. And I think you're kind of saying that, but it doesn't even have to take 100%. It can actually start with even just that 20%, and how much that can impact. And I think about, if I look at racism and how that, and I can't remember this, I saw TED. There was one person in I think it was Spain, that at the time when slave owners and slave trade was starting, he put it out there that Black people were inferior. And think about that. That just came from that one person. He knew he was telling a lie, but that's what he convinced other people to convince them to say, "Oh, it's okay what we're doing, right?" And so that's a very tiny percentage, much less than 20%. But look at the impact that had. And obviously that had an impact for evil. And so, but if we put out the truth, that has an incredible ability to also impact. But we have to shift our belief systems. We have to shift our perceptions and then base them more on what is accurate.
Exactly. And one of the things that we talk about, William, even like in many previous episodes, we talked about the idea of the grassroots, right? Because if you think about the vast majority of people in this country that are kind of more at that grassroots level as opposed to the very wealthy level up there, we really do have a lot of power.
Right.
But it's really whether or not we choose to use that power in an appropriate way. And I'm glad you brought up the Pareto principle, because one of the things that I thought was interesting about the Pareto principle, it was established by an Italian economist who noticed that in multiple societies across different economies, the same distribution was apparent, right? About 20% of the people controlled about 80% of the wealth, which is what I was saying, the point that I was making earlier. But over the course of time, as businesses grew and developed, researchers started to apply that principle in other areas and realized that it kind of applied across the board. So for example, 20% of customers create 80% of the revenue. 20% of workers produce 80% of the output. 20% of causes produce 80% of consequences. So it's kind of like that 20% can kind of go either way. To your point, that 20% can go in a very positive direction, or it can go in a very negative direction. So for me, when I think about it in terms of the wealth distribution, that's where I see in a lot of instances is going in that negative direction, because you have a very small percentage of the people with all of this wealth, and all of that wealth often translates into power.
Right. I think the wealth is a big factor, but I think the power is even more important to take a look at, because I think the tools, they work together. And even there's tools that are not powerful, that are not rich, that are not wealthy, but they maintain the wealth in the hands of the other rest of the 20%. And it's just they work together somehow. I really don't understand the fullness of it, because some things you just have to step back away from and just not really investigate too much, because your mind might go into places that you don't want them to go. So you look at them lightly, the 20%, because they're everywhere. You talked about grassroots, and these 20% are everywhere. They can be your daughter, they can be a teacher of yours or your parents. It could be, that's why you have to pay attention. Like, they're everywhere. They're not just in a castle or or a mansion in Beverly Hills, or places like that, or in Florida, nice houses. The 20% are comprised of all kinds of people from all kinds of walks of life, from all races, all genders, all ages, classes, immigration status. It's like everywhere. And then, but that also goes for the 80%. And they're also the natural born leaders, like, kids born with the ability to make music, and they graduate from college or get their PhD by the age of 12 or sooner. These are the aides that are leaders, and that, most of the time we look at them like, oh, he's just a weird kid or something, but they're really leaders. And unless we start looking at the aides and the leadership that they bring, and aides as being kids or adults or any walk of life, we're just gonna be like, in the same predicament always. And we got to be open-minded about that eights can be born eights and leaders. And not all of them are leaders. Some of them, I have 4 categories for the eights, and one that I left, untold or whatever, so people can discover it. But it's a new way of looking at a new way of reimagining we by reimagining, me,
Yeah,
kind of thing. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And a little bit more about when I was doing some research on the Pareto principle, it kind of ran into these two structural, one, a structural form, and then also what is the meaning of that structural form. So if you look at the 20%, oftentimes, now this is neither negative or positive, right? But that 20% can define the norms, the legitimacy, belonging, and then the 80% often adapts to those norms in order to survive, right? And so it just really kind of depends on what is the flavor that you're adding when you think about this 80 and this 20 and all of that. So do you have like a comment on what I
do.
talked about? Yeah. And then after this, we'll go and take a quick break.
So the 20% you were mentioning, control, whether for good or for bad, I believe for all of human history until this book finally revealed it, it's been the evil tooth. And you just look at the news, you read the history books, you talk to anybody who's always, they're always pessimistic. Oh, there's no future here. It's always going to be this and that, So, but now that the book is here and the knowledge is available, maybe there would be a time, maybe in 10 years, where things will be 80% livable, workable, and maybe 20% like, there's this, stuff we got to work on, so we'll see about that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So Gail, you look like you're nodding your head. So
Yeah,
we'll take this and then we'll go to break.
Okay. I look at that 20% and the 80%. Evil doesn't often have to require passivity. It's because that's often appears as more neutrality. But it's the person that doesn't intervene or doesn't object or doesn't see. They're really that infrastructure of that 80%, I think, of harm. They may not be the designer of that 20%, but I think they make up that 80% because of that passivity, instead of being more conscious and more active in that consciousness, right? To question, to try to be curious about, and to question what that 20% is saying, is what I think is required.
Exactly. Because if you kind of look at if I focus on the 20%, let's say the 20% of the people in the Americas, the society of America, 100% agree that we should have a very anti-racist society, right? Or that we should have this society where your background doesn't play a role in how far you can get in life, if you had a different sense of belonging. So that's what I'm saying. It could be like, to William's point, the 20% in particular, if you look at them as really having this and connecting it to power, right? Because the power doesn't have to be negative. The power can be very positive. And so if we get to this point where we make a decision that this is how we want to live, that we want to have a sense of belonging, we want to have diversity, we want to have equity, and we want to have all of this type of thing. And if that 20%, to Gail's point, if that 20% is working hard enough to get to that place, they can be that kind of positive influence on the 80%. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that it could go either way. And I think that was one of the points that you were making earlier, William, but that the 20% can kind of go either way. And when you think about it in terms of power, because you can have power that you use in a positive way or power that you use in a negative way.
Right. It's not going to be. So I read a review on one of my on the Amazon book page about my book. Something about this book is for people who don't want to think and want an author to tell them what to think, and this is a fake kumbaya kind of event. And to that I say, in my book, I don't promise utopia. I say the only thing that it makes possible is opportunity for people and also for work to happen. Everything else remains the same, like work. Like it's not happy, heaven or nothing like that. It's just everybody gets to work. Everybody does if you're a teacher, you're the best teacher you can be. If you're a police officer, a fireman, lawyer, whatever, that's what it allows for. It's not about being heaven on earth or nothing like that. It just creates opportunities for normal kind of living.
Exactly. And it's a way of establishing belonging. Like we can have a society where everybody has a sense of belonging, as opposed to having a society where there's so many people who feel like I'm not even a part of this. Like I'm impacted in a negative way. So I want to see something different. So when I think about the anti-racism conversations that we've had, it kind of goes into that space. Because I don't want to be a victim of racism. If I don't want to be a victim of racism, then that means I have to raise my voice in a different kind of way, because my enemy is racism. But if I'm not saying anything, then it kind of doesn't move me forward. Right. So we're going to go ahead and take a break now, and we'll come back and we'll continue the conversation.
What if your training isn't enough? The Multicultural Mindset Podcast invites counselors and therapists to unlearn the one-size-fits-all approach. This isn't cultural competence. It's a way of being that brings racialized experiences from the margins to the very center of care. Let's stop pathologizing Black pain and start challenging the system that created the bias in the first place. Visit newseasons.training to subscribe.
What if one decision could change everything? Cherise Evans, best-selling author of The Power of One, The 5 Essential Keys to Success, knows that transformation starts within. Let Cherise help you discover your authentic self and live with confidence, purpose, and joy. Whether you're ready to grow your career, your relationships, or your mindset, Cherise can show you how to elevate. Book with her today at shareevans.com. There is more to life than simply surviving or even thriving. There's flourishing. High performance and quantum success coach Beth Larson helps you calibrate and elevate your life. Beth specializes in working with women who want more from their life, more energy, joy, passion, connection, and more meaning. As your coach, she will help you get clear about your life, prioritize what's important, and become a master of your energy. Visit BethLarsonCoaching.com.
Are you ready to break free from self-sabotaging patterns and reclaim your power? I'm Beck Nelson, licensed therapist, spiritual mentor, and psychic medium, helping individuals achieve true personal liberation through my Beckology framework. This step-by-step system shifts your mindset, strengthens your intuition, and empowers lasting change. Work with me through single sessions, 90-day or 6-month programs, or explore my courses, books, and coaching. Visit becknelson.com to get started.
Do you want to become a host? Start your own podcast to inspire, persuade, and influence others on what you're passionate about? At the Transformation Network, we can help make your talk radio dreams happen. Let's take your hopes, dreams, and passions and put them on air today. Email us at host@transformationtalkradio.com to learn more about becoming a host of your very own show.
So welcome back to Inflection Point Podcast as we continue our discussion with William Mile, author of the #1 bestseller, Imagine Toward a Brotherhood of Man. So I'd like to flip the conversation a little bit and dig a little more so into the actual title itself, particularly we're starting to talk about the brotherhood of man. So when I see the word imagine, one of the things that pops into my mind is probably a theme that you've heard as I'm voicing my own opinion. We cannot build a new society with an old imagination of humanity. Right. And so we want something new. We have to have a new vision. Right. And so when I think about the brotherhood framework, I think about imagination, moral recognition, humanization, brotherhood, social harmony. Those are the types of things that I think about when I put those two words together, imagine toward a brotherhood of man. So in your view of brotherhood, is it something that we decide, or is it something that we have to learn to see in order to have a change in our perception? Like, how do you flesh out what the meaning is in your own writing when it comes to the imagine part and the brotherhood part?
Well, the brotherhood is not so much like I said, like kumbaya. It's more like it's an opportunity for people to work. And what's the part that you said before that? How do you flesh out?
Yeah.
How do you flesh out? What was it?
So I was asking, this is the question that I'm asking. In your view, is brotherhood something that we decide, or is it something that we have to learn to see? In other words, our change in our perception is what opens us up to the brotherhood part.
Yeah, it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
You need to first see through understanding. You need to know how the book relates to your life and your situation, and how you can express it in your circle of influence, and how you want to grow it or just maintain it or whatever. I've always been told you're either growing or you're going backwards. So that depends on that. Once you understand what the book is trying to say, it's a decision you have to make. You have to decide, how am I going to change my habits? How am I going to change my reading habits? What am I going to read now? How am I going to learn to develop myself? How am I going to learn to deal with people better, relationships, work? What career do I want to pursue? You have to make decisions after you understand the principles of like the A2 ratio and the categories within the A2 ratio of humanity. Beyond that, even in my blog, I say it's more even expanded for people who are into that. So understanding first and then make a decision, and it's a little bit of both.
Okay, excellent. Gail, you have any comments on that?
Yeah, it's not, I think that the perception and belief system has to change so that it has to shift. The default has to shift, kind of. So it's like failing to recognize someone's humanity can start to feel as uncomfortable as any overt cruelty that you witness or observe or hear about feels to you now. We have to have that shift of perception and belief that, you know what, this is also cruelty. This is also, right? We have to see that from in a different view, a different perception. Yeah. And when we can all start to recognize that, our eyes will be much more open, and our hearts.
Right.
Because our minds are, yeah.
So what if we were to look at how brotherhood could potentially disrupt the Pareto pattern? So if true brotherhood could mean no group functions as a reference human, no group defines normalcy for others, and human recognition becomes mutual rather than hierarchical. So how do you respond to that, William, in terms of how the brotherhood that you're describing could potentially disrupt the Pareto pattern? Or do you believe that it could, or do you believe that it could not?
I think there could be like from the evil twos being the dominant 20% in the Pareto's principle, to a more wiser leader style of an eight, as I call them, from the 8-2 theory, being in charge or leading mass amounts of people to a more maybe opposite direction of what has been so far. I mean, it only, not only, but it'll affect 80%, according to Pareto's principle, of our experience of life for the better. I mean, there's still work to do, and there will always be some negative aspect of society. Is the good and the bad, it's always in there. But maybe if there's 80% good instead of 80%, horrific stuff going on, and 20% okay, negative stuff going on, instead of flip how it's always been in our history, maybe I don't know what can happen. It's just, that's why I use imagine. That's why I use words like that to express how you should approach the knowledge in the book.
Absolutely, because I mean, I agree with you. That's why I like the word imagine as well. Like I have a 6-year-old, my grandson just turned 6 years old, and he is so incredibly imaginative, and I love having conversations with him. And I feel like you can learn so much from watching the way that children, and Gail, you can probably attest to this as well, with your grandchildren, but just watching how they move through the world and how they figure things out and the questions that they might ask and all of that. And you think about them as not being necessarily formed yet. So they're still going through that process of understanding the world around them and all of that. So I love the fact that you're framing this within that conversation of imagine. So Gail, when you think about your grandkids, don't you kind of see that in them?
Oh yeah, yes, definitely. I mean, it's amazing to watch them and to watch them, interact with their peers and negotiate and kind of challenge themselves and their peers. It's really amazing to watch that. And many of them they understand that. They're getting it, or they have it innately.
And yeah, it's very, very interesting. I had a conversation with my grandson very recently, and he was reading a book. I don't remember what book he was reading, but he's just now learning how to read, right? So it's really exciting just watching him understand the fact that he can read now and not always be asking other people. But and whatever it was, I had made the statement to him that he was a Black person. And he looked at me and he said, "Wait, I'm Black?" And I said, "Yeah." And he's like, "Oh," and he just kept it moving. So there wasn't like, he doesn't have like a frame of reference of what does that mean other than a recognition within himself, right? But not connecting anything to it. He was like, oh, okay. And then he just kept right on doing what he was doing. And so in his imagined world, like I could walk through the world and be a Black person and it doesn't mean anything negative. Right?
Yes. And it really shouldn't, because the book, I think we had this conversation earlier when we were getting to know each other, but the book, I think, fulfills the dream, but beyond the dream of Martin Luther King, of judging people by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin. But the book goes beyond that, not just the color of their skin, but also their gender, their immigration status, their age, or any other kind of group, more segmentation that we do with people, in all parts of like culture and society. It goes beyond just the color of people's skin, which was a great start, and it was probably very contextual what he was telling his people, because at that time it was the color that was important for people to like get over it, but now, like with the book, it's beyond that. I mean, we have a lot of problems with people not really caring about women and depending on your immigration status or what kind of hair you have or stuff like that. You know, it's beyond that, and it goes into more deeper stuff than just the color of your skin, which
Yeah,
is,
yeah,
I
yeah.
think, is like
Absolutely.
something to
Absolutely.
think about.
Absolutely. I mean, wouldn't it be really, really nice if the world was like this? That I could walk through the world, you could walk through the world, Gail could walk through the world, and we're just totally and completely accepted in terms of our humanity. That we
Right.
have the freedom to be who we are in terms of our culture, our music, our art, our this, or that, but not be encumbered by all of this other stuff that attempts to define me or lock me into this box that I don't want to be in, because that's not how I define myself. But just imagine what the world could be like if people literally just had the freedom to be the person that they were purposed to be,
Right.
right?
We didn't come here with all that stuff, right? With all that those
Exactly.
labels and that judgment and the, and all that. We didn't come here with any of that. It happened to us, and that's the belief systems that happened to us. But well, yeah, I know it would be amazing, right?
And
Yeah,
I think
another world to
I
live
think
in.
it would be amazing. And also, the realistic part is, remember, the 80% is that part, and then the 20% is
Right.
more the work we need to continue to resolve, because there will
Right.
always be crime, there will always be,
Yes, yes,
you know,
yes.
sinister happenings and everything. And I think that the book it will be able to affect society in this way that we're just talking about right now, by influencing first, and I think foremost, the storytellers,
Yes.
Hollywood,
Yes.
the writers,
Yes.
people, you know, TV shows, even music has itself stories in music.
Oh yes.
And if the stories in these kind of
Influencers.
venues,
Yeah.
avenues of storytelling happen, then I think that it'll lay a big foundation for what we're talking about to happen to society for the better. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we are starting to wind down, and William, I want to give you the opportunity to tell our audience, how can they get in touch with you if they want to know more about your book, if they want to read your blog, like all of these different things. Let the audience know how they can talk to you, and what are your final thoughts from this conversation that we have that might also interest your audience in wanting to connect with you as well.
Okay, my author website is www.williammile.com. It has all my social media accounts, Instagram, TikTok. It has reader reviews on there. It has my book trailer. It has my bio, obviously, and just articles that I've written that go beyond the book into a little deeper look into the A2 theory and what it means to different kinds of people. And, you know, everything's there. Different places you could buy the book on Amazon. It has the link to that. And, you know, my final thoughts, I guess, would be, what is it? As far as producing change on a large scale for this to happen, I think it's all about marketing. It's all about marketing, and nobody has to do anything except me. I have to market. I have to go on podcasts. I have to, do different talks with different people like this. And one way people can support it, if they feel like they've benefited from the content on my page and my book, would be, you know, either you do a tip-top jar, tipping through that, so I could keep doing podcasts, or you can buy the book, or you can leave a review on Amazon, or just share with friends and family who you think would vibe with it. You know, you don't want to get too, out of control with it, but you know, whoever you think will vibe with it, you can share with it, and it's fine, you know. So
Excellent, excellent.
yeah. Mhm.
So, Gail, did you have any final thoughts?
Well, I think what you're offering and suggesting is that something we all can do is to be open to the possibility to imagine, as you use that word, to really give ourselves permission to look within and look outside and really challenge what our old belief systems have always been. And that's not an easy path to take, but it's one that I think is necessary and one that we all can step into and participate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So there's a couple of other things that I want to call out before we kind of wind down this show. For those in our audience, when you go on to the promo page for this episode, we have a whole entire list of giveaways, and these are our episode resources. And so how you can get in touch with William is also listed there. His book is also, I'm going to say the title again, Imagine Toward a Brotherhood of Man, is available on Amazon. And then I also put together a reflection ethos. There's a couple of questions for you to participate in as a follow-up to this episode and contribute to your own Reimagine We journey. And then also I have an invitation to a complimentary 3-hour midweek intensive on Thursday, April the 2nd. And this is something that I'm doing. If you've been following me for a while, you know that I have this topic of the 6 keys to nurture, grow, and empower your life. But I've created it also as a prelude through an Reimagine We Empowerment Lab that I will be launching later on this year. So this is a year-long empowerment program that I'll be launching it in the spring or early summer. And so I just, again, calling out, these are the resources. I want to make it a point now that we actually have really robust resources that our audience can benefit from. They can interact with us through these resources and all of that. So we're just about at the end of our show, and I'd like to kind of begin to wind down with this thought in mind. And this is actually a quote that comes from William's book. And that quote is, "The power of this 8-2 theory is limitless in its scope and has the potential to change every aspect for the better. God's love and transformative power are the important things uniting the eights." And that quote really, really resonated with me as I read it, when I think about my own view, my own faith walk, and all of that, and just kind of understanding that there is so much happening in the world right now, but there's also so much that we can do right now, right? When you think about the benefit that we have of being able to be on the internet and being able to express ourselves and all of that, if you go back 20 years, we didn't have that type of thing. It's interesting when I'll talk about my own sort of experiences and growing up and dealing with racism and all of that, back in the 60s and 70s, when, there was so much going on and there were rioting and all kinds of things like that, but they had the power to kind of black all of that out of television. But the way, for example, my family in Pittsburgh knew about what was happening in Detroit is because we had family in Detroit. So they would call us on the phone and let us know. But today, it's very different. You can make a video, you can do an audio, you can do a podcast, you can do all of these things that enable us to be able to speak a more profound truth and to be able to see all of things that are happening in the world right now and ask the question, what can I imagine that I can do to contribute to something very, very different? So, Gail, we have 2 more minutes. I'm going to let you close us out at this point.
Me?
Yes.
Well, my wish is that we all take that time within ourselves to challenge our beliefs and to really kind of look in the mirror and ask yourself, is what you believe absolutely is the absolute truth? And really, does it resonate? And so many of us will just say, oh, that's what I've been taught, that's what I've learned, but challenge that. and really look at what, because even that's a major step in contributing to reimagining all of us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So to our audience, I want to thank you so much for joining us in this episode of Inflection Point Podcast. We are here every first and third Wednesday of the month at 3 p.m. Pacific time and 6 p.m. Eastern time on the Transformation Network. And be sure to register for the complimentary 3-hour midweek intensive that I mentioned earlier. All of the information you need is listed in the giveaways. Get the reflection ethos so you can be a part of the conversation, and to discover the voice of our women's history highlight. And most importantly, make sure you go and find out more about William Mayo and his book, Imagine Toward a Brotherhood of Man. So I thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Inflection Point Podcast. Thank you for tuning in to Inflection Point Podcast on the Transformation Network. To discover more about the Reimagine We platform, subscribe on Substack at anitadrussell.substack.com.